Welcome to Sidequests, the podcast that explores the strange, surprising, and often forgotten rabbit holes of history. Because sometimes history isn't what happens when people are trying to change the world. It's what happened when the world was making other plans. By 1945, the Allies had tried just about everything to defeat Nazi Germany. Bombs, spies, paratroopers, and propaganda, a lot of propaganda. But one operation stood out not because of how loud it was, but how quiet. No explosions, no assassinations, just mail. Fake mail, letters, stamps. Even counterfeit Nazi newspapers disguised so well that actual German postal workers unknowingly delivered anti-Nazi propaganda straight to the front doors of unsuspecting citizens. It was one of the strangest psychological operations of World War II. And its name? Operation Cornflakes. Today we're digging into the Allied mission to weaponize the mail. How it worked, why it almost didn't, and what happens when you combine airmail with espionage and just a touch of trolling. World War II wasn't just fought with bullets and bombs. It was also fought with words, leaflets, broadcasts, and fake newspapers, all carefully crafted to weaken morale and stoke paranoia. Both sides understood the power of messaging. The Nazis had Goebbels and the Ministry of Propaganda. The Allies had teams of writers, artists, and intelligence officers working out of places like Britain's Political Warfare Executive and America's Office of Strategic Services, the forerunner to the CIA. The goal? Undermine enemy confidence. Sow confusion. Make the other side question what they believed was true. Allied forces dropped millions of leaflets over enemy territory. Some encouraged surrender, others told soldiers their wives were cheating on them. Some warned about incoming bombings. Others pretended to be official Nazi documents announcing defeat. And these tactics didn't stop at the battlefield. They aimed to get inside the lives of civilians, into kitchens, coffee tables, and coat pockets. Anything that could chip away at loyalty to Hitler, one carefully chosen sentence at a time. Which brings us to the mail train gambit. As the war dragged on and Allied planes controlled the skies over Europe, someone had a thought. What if, instead of dropping leaflets that got swept away or ignored, we slipped fake letters into the actual German mail system? And not just any letters, exact replicas of real Nazi mail, filled with propaganda written in perfect German, stamped with forged postmarks and bundled up just like the real thing. If done right, the Germans would open their mailboxes and find exactly what the Allies wanted them to read, without even knowing it. It was weird, it was wildly ambitious. And it was time for breakfast. Operation Cornflakes was born. So how do you sneak anti-Nazi propaganda into the German mail system? Step 1. Bomb the mail train. Operation Cornflakes began in early 1945 as an effort by the OSS, America's wartime intelligence agency, to exploit a very specific moment of German vulnerability. Here was the idea. Wait until a German mail train was en route. Send Allied bombers to destroy it. Then, while the wreckage was still being cleared by German postal workers, drop bags of fake mail from the sky, bundles carefully designed to look exactly like the real thing. The hope? German workers would see the piles of envelopes and newspapers scattered among the debris and just collect everything. They'd unknowingly deliver Allied propaganda directly to German households. And the mail itself? It was a work of spycraft art. Each letter had a fake return address, realistic postage, and even a forged Nazi postage stamp, complete with Hitler's face, just slightly distorted so his lip curled into a sneer. But the real payload was a newsletter called Das Neue Deutschland. It looked like a loyal Nazi publication, but it was filled with news about German defeats, SS atrocities, and the crumbling Third Reich. The content was real, but terrifying for citizens who believed in Hitler's invincibility. To make the ruse even more convincing, some of the fake envelopes were addressed to known Nazi Party members. It wasn't just propaganda, it was a psychological judo move. The Germans would open a letter, think it came from the party, and read that the party was losing. A little paranoia, delivered express. The OSS dropped thousands of these letters, and for a brief period in 1945, it worked. Some of the fake propaganda made its way into actual German homes through the regular post. airmail weaponized. So, did Operation Cornflakes actually work? Well, sort of. German postal workers, overwhelmed by the chaos of war and the mess of bombed-out mail trains, really did pick up some of the fake bundles. Propaganda newsletters like Das Neue Deutschland were successfully delivered at least a few times to real German homes. In one instance, OSS agents confirmed that forged letters addressed to Nazi party members were processed and delivered through the regular system. At that point, it was no longer an Allied operation. It was a Nazi delivery guy handing Nazi citizens anti-Nazi propaganda. But the impact? That's a bit harder to measure. By the time Operation Cornflakes launched in February 1945, the war in Europe was already in its final stages. The Nazi regime was crumbling, Allied troops were marching toward Berlin, and most Germans were more concerned with survival than party newsletters, real or fake. Even so, the creativity of the operation made it stand out. It was a symbol of just how far the Allies were willing to go to undermine the regime, not just with firepower, but with paper cuts to the psyche. After the war, many of the forged Hitler stamps from the operation were recovered. Today, they're considered rare collectibles, little pieces of postal sabotage that never made it into circulation. Historians and philatelists alike treasure them as proof that the pen really can be mightier than the sword, especially when delivered by air over a smoldering mail car. And if nothing else, Operation Cornflakes proved one thing. In a war full of code breakers, spies, and double agents, sometimes the sneakiest plan is just to look like junk mail. Operation Cornflakes didn't end the war, but it did leave behind one of the weirdest, most quietly subversive campaigns of World War II. No explosions, no shootouts, just paper. Ink. A postage stamp that smirked in all the right places. It was a reminder that even in the middle of a global conflict, strategy could be creative, propaganda could be clever, and subversion could be well packaged. Because sometimes history doesn't knock down the front door, it just slips in through the mail slot. That's it for today's Sidequest. If you enjoyed this bowl of historical curiosities, subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend who loves history's odd corners. This has been Sidequests, because history is what happens when the world is making other plans.